Hello and welcome back to the Law Society's second instalment of the Solicitor series, kindly sponsored by the Southern Law Association. Today I'm joined by Patrice Cooney from the Legal Aid Board. Do you want to give a short introduction to yourself, Patrice, and I suppose how you entered into the legal profession?
Okay, well, I'm originally from Clare, and in the mid-1980s I went to UCC and I completed a BCL, and then I went on from there to qualify as a solicitor in 1990, and since then I have practiced in Limerick initially, and I practiced in Dublin for a while in the Midlands, and then since 1999 I've been practicing here full-time in Cork.
Very good. And how did you progress kind of into the field you're in now, and I suppose into family law and with the Legal Aid Board?
Well, I started in general practice, and I was there for a few years, and I did everything in general practice. I did conveyancing and probate and personal injuries litigation and family law. But I became interested in family law, so then in 1995 I joined the Legal Aid Board, and I'm specialising in family law and working for the board since then.
So I suppose in looking, the kind of work you do is very much in the public sector as opposed to the private sector, and kind of what do you see as the main differences between those two kind of aspects of law?
Okay, well, I worked in the private sector when I started in my career, so it's very similar because you're still dealing with the clients, and you're giving them the same service as they would have if they went to a private solicitor's office. I suppose the difference is that they're not your personal clients, they're the client of the Legal Aid Board, and I suppose a big difference is that you're not worried about them paying you, so you can give them the service they need without worrying about things like that, which I think makes it a much healthier solicitor-client relationship. And then of course the big advantage of working for the board is that you've all the backup of the board. You have HR functions, you have you can get funding for reports in your cases, so you have that specialist backup to help you represent your clients that you wouldn't have in a private office.
Yeah, I know that all sounds very good, and particularly the kind of, I suppose, not worrying about being paid probably impacts and improves the service that you can offer, because you're just there to provide the service and not worry about everything else.
Yeah.
But one thing I suppose you don't have the opportunity to do is to pick the clients, and the clients don't have the opportunity to pick you.
Yeah.
And do you find that's kind of challenging for yourselves and for the clients as well, I suppose, not having that choice?
Yeah, well, I suppose it is. I suppose from the solicitor's point of view, like we just take whoever's assigned to us and we work with that. That's what we're trained to do. That's what we're expected to do. I suppose it is a little bit more challenging for the clients because sometimes they might have a preference for a solicitor, but it actually works quite well because we do maintain that detached professional relationship, and we're there to give them professional advice, and that's the same advice you give them. It's not really a personal connection as such.
Yeah, and I suppose you talked about the kind of means testing of it. How does that kind of work? Would people be turned away if they didn't fall in the kind of category? Or?
Yeah, so we have limits, and then we have in between limits. So if your means are over 18,000, then you would not be eligible for legal aid, and we just can't help you at all. And then there's an in-between position whereby you might have to pay an additional contribution, but you're still entitled to the service. And then I suppose it's really important to say that for things like childcare and domestic violence, you won't have to pay a contribution, because obviously it's really important that people get access to those services regardless of, or without being expected to pay anything,
Very good. And I suppose looking at kind of two-pronged question here, would you have any advice for a student, firstly, who's hoping to go into work in family law generally, and then maybe going into work with someone like yourselves in the legal aid or the kind of public sector? Would you have any kind of advice separate for that, or...?
Okay, well, in my experience meeting students over the years, I think it's helpful while you're in UCC to do things like work with FLAC, or we also, in the Legal Aid Board, through UCC, we participate in the summer work placement programme. Obviously not this year or last year, but we will be hopefully back up and running with it next year. I think it's really important as a student to get access to see a dynamic of an office or between a solicitor and a client. And then coming out of college and thinking about apprenticeships and stuff, I certainly did my apprenticeship in general law, and I found that really good. So I think going into family law, it's probably no harm to get as much broad experience in other areas of law, which you can bring into your work, even as a family lawyer or in the Legal Aid Board, because as I say, we do other work as well on behalf of clients. So in my experience, the best candidates are the ones who have that little bit of broad experience and then decide ultimately to specialise in family law like I did,
Yeah, very good. And what kind of skills, I suppose, you can touch on a few there now, having that kind of broad interest, and I suppose more generally having that kind of legal interest and legal skills, but what other kind of skills would make more specific to a family law, I suppose, you'd be kind of looking out for and would make a good family lawyer?
Yes, well, I suppose the key thing in family lawyer is the word lawyer.
Yeah.
And, you know, what we're looking for always are good lawyers, people who are well versed in the statutes and the case law and family law. For working in the Legal Aid Board, you have to have excellent advocacy skills because even though we do a lot of district court work, you know, if, for example, a law student who might want to become a barrister and specialise in family law, you'd need excellent advocacy skills for that as well. You need excellent organisation skills because you don't just rock up in court and win your case. You have to do all the groundwork, do all your preparation, prepare your witnesses and your court reports. So that's really important in a lawyer. In family law, and people don't kind of think this, but you need to be really good at business and finance because if you're doing divorces for people, you're working out tax issues and pensions and splitting up businesses. So you need all those skills to be able to link in with the accountants and all the professionals who'd be supporting your clients in those situations. But I mean, a big aspect of family law is dealing with custody and access disputes. So for those kind of disputes, you need a lot of kind of empathy and compassion, and you need good collaborative skills because, you know, it's important to try and encourage your clients. You know, they're going to be parents long after they separate or divorce. They're going to be parents to these children. They're going to have to co-parent them. So that's a huge focus now in family law, and we need people with those kind of skills to help clients navigate those issues, you know.
Very good.
Yeah.
And I suppose you kind of touched on a small bit there on the importance of empathy and understanding because you are dealing with a lot of the time some very difficult, very sensitive matters. There might be kids involved, anything like that. Do you find that can be challenging yourself? Do you find just over the years you kind of got used to it, or how do you kind of deal with those maybe more difficult and challenging cases that come across your desk?
Well, it is. It can be very difficult, and you know, I suppose the important thing, and we always need to keep reminding ourselves in family law that you're not the clients, you're not their sister or their friend or their uncle. You know, you're their professional advisor, and you must keep that sense of detachment at all times. But you do, you know, with human nature, you do tend to get emotionally involved, and you need to have those kind of strategies in place. So I find peer support hugely important. I mean, we have a fantastic office in Post Key where we all kind of, you know, soundbite cases and talk to each other about issues that arise. You can deal with your other colleagues in practice, and of course we get support as well from our head office in dealing with those kind of issues. And you know, it's like everything in life. I think as a family lawyer, it's good to have a sense of humour. You need to be able to have a laugh and a joke with your colleagues, and that's how you get through your work.
Yeah.
You know,
Would there ever be any situations maybe where you had to pull back from a case or anything like that you might be too emotionally involved, or it might be something a sensitive matter? Does that ever happen, or is it just kind of it's work and that's just kind of how it goes?
No, because you know, as I say, it can be challenging, but you know, you need to kind of grow from those challenges, and you know, if you're going to stick at this work, you need to be able to meet them, and you need to be able to manage those situations whatever way you can, because as I say, you're your client's professional advisor, so you must maintain that role at all times, and you can't really walk out on a client in the middle of a case. That's unprofessional, really. You know, so
no, definitely.
Yeah.
And I suppose we kind of talked on it, and you went to UCC, and you're still here in Cork, so you must have a good love for Cork, definitely. I suppose what kind of advantages would you see between Cork and Dublin, or would you kind of advise students stay in Cork?
Well, yes. I mean, I've practiced here now for 22 years. So, and obviously I went to UCC, and that's actually one of the great things about being back here today, talking to you. It's lovely to be back here. I have fantastic memories. But I suppose Cork is a great place to practice because there's such fantastic colleagues. For example, in family law, we have structured, we have the Cork Family Lawyers Association, and they organise CPD events and support for colleagues and even social events. And then, of course, there's the Southern Law Association. They also have a family law committee, and they provide huge support and networks. And it's a great place to practice. In terms of family law, I suppose in Dublin and to some extent in Cork City, you probably have courts that would kind of concentrate day in, day out on family law. Whereas, and we'd have that a little bit in Cork as well, but as you move out around the county, you'd have mixed courts. So in the morning, they could be doing road traffic offences, and then they could be hearing a domestic violence case in the afternoon. But again, it comes back to my whole philosophy that the mix of skills and experiences do lend themselves to, I think, greater decision making, because family law cases are part of life, so they involve everything, you know, so it actually works quite well. Although I think ultimately the move in family law will be to specialise in family law. law courts, which
eventually as we kind of go down the track.
Yeah,
Oh, very good. I suppose you kind of talked about in the courts there, and we kind of saw a lot with COVID a move to remote hearings and remote courts. How did you find them? Do you think they could be even an opportunity for, say, in kind of domestic violence cases, for example, having remote hearings or giving kind of witness statements and more remotely, or do you think that might be kind of an opportunity in the space, or how did you find it?
Oh, well, I mean, I think remote courts, obviously, it was like, we mightn't have had them for 5 or 10 years, but now we have them, they've really been embedded in the last 12 to 18 months in our justice system. And I suppose it's very convenient because we can even, for example, in Cork, we can be in the High Court in Dublin. I can be at my office, on my laptop. And, that's a huge time saving. It's much better than having to get up and get the 6 o'clock train in the morning. So from a practical point of view, it's huge. But still, for a lot of cases, I think you need the in-person hearing. Things like domestic violence, where you're assessing somebody's credibility. It kind of helps if you see them in the flesh. But I think we're going to have a hybrid model in the future with both. And
I suppose in kind of COVID, have you found that the volume of cases has been a big backlog within the courts for yourselves, where you kind of slowed down in what you could and couldn't do? Like I know I kind of saw there recently, I think in the Irish Times had it up that there was a 29% rise in divorce throughout the last 12 months. Have you kind of found yourselves that there's been a massive growth in kind of divorce and separation and family law issues over the last kind of pandemic side of it?
I think a bit of both. I think a lot of people who might have had cracks in their relationship have kind of held it together, through COVID, and then obviously there has been some increase in domestic violence. Unfortunately, a lot of courts had to be cancelled due to the level 5 restrictions, and that caused backlogs. Which is a big difficulty, because obviously the longer these cases go on, it makes it more difficult. But interestingly, and I saw those figures for divorce, I think that may not necessarily be pandemic related, because in 2019 they reduced the period from 4 years separation to 2 years. So now people are kind of going straight to divorce. And whereas before they would have had to possibly go through judicial separation and then wait 4 years for their divorce. So I think that possibly accounts for the increase in divorce cases more than the pandemic. But it's definitely a huge change in family law.
It's kind of coming down the track anyway. But we might see, I suppose, more kind of divorces going forward, potentially with the reduction. It kind of seems to be a trend almost. There's more and more divorces since, I suppose, we introduced it. I know you have been practicing all the way through that, and you saw the introduction of divorces.
I know.
Massive change in your practice, definitely, I imagine, was it?
Yes, I mean, I kind of grew up with divorce, because when I started practicing, there was no divorce. So that's there since 1996. And I suppose another huge change was there was no legislation until 2010 for non-marital couples. So we have the Cohabitation Act. So that would have had a huge impact on the Legal Aid Board, in terms of we would now do a lot of cases on divorce and cohabitation that we wouldn't have been doing when I started. So there has been a huge growth in family law. And of course then the reduction of the period in 2019 brought a huge a huge influx of new divorce cases, which, I suppose what people really want is they want a resolution of their issues. They want, I won't say finality, but they want to know that they want certainty, I think. And that's what, getting divorced within a reasonable time frame brings them, And I suppose another huge change in the pandemic is because the courts were cancelled, we kind of worked more, we set up settlement hubs so we could maybe try and settle more cases that we couldn't get heard. And I think that's a huge change as well. And certainly in Cork, we ran a very successful settlement hub, and now people are more inclined to kind of sit around a table like this and talk about their cases and try and come up with solutions, which of course is the healthiest way to deal with family law cases.
Do you think that's kind of growing, kind of, I suppose, settlements and mediation and that kind of side of it, is that kind of growing a lot more recent years? Or?
Oh, absolutely, So it's kind of government policy, and I know in Limerick they're running a pilot project now on this kind of holistic family law system, whereby if you have a family law issue, you go into a system whereby you can access maybe at first instance mediation or something like that, and then maybe get supports for children and try and build from there and try and come to solutions through collaboration, and then the final hurdle would be the court applications if nothing can be achieved. But that's definitely, I know they're working on that model, and I think that if they can kind of put the framework together, I think it will be rolled out all over the country. And as family lawyers, that's what we want to see. We want to see, you feel an awful lot better when you come away from a successful settlement meeting than when you have a court case and somebody comes out having gotten a good bashing maybe, or and it's it must be so hard to recover from that, and that's just the lawyer recovering now to mind the client.
No, definitely, and I think it's a big change that we're seeing, not just in family law, I suppose across laws, that move towards mediation, arbitration, that kind of side of it. But I suppose more generally within family law, what kind of changes would you like to see going forward, or in the future? Do you see anything, maybe changes in legislation that we might need, any gaps there, or just generally changes in the practice you'd like to see? Yeah,
well, I suppose a lot of the difficulties arise in relation to custody and access disputes. And I mean, I think we do have the laws there, but maybe we need to kind of put in funding to make sure that they're implemented correctly. Like, for example, the constitutional referendum on the voice of the child, but we still don't have a sort of a national advocacy service or a guardian ad litem service for children, and I think that needs to be set up. And then another huge bugbear of mine is contact centres, so that if you have contentious disputes, you have a neutral space where the non-custodial parent can build a relationship with their child. And, that's the areas I would like to see moving forward in the future. But I think the whole new model of this kind of collaborative approach and the pilot project in Limerick, I've read the paper in relation to that, and I see they're looking at the family law system from that perspective.
I know, very good. I think it's kind of a good kind of point to make as well, because, as you said, these cases are very difficult cases. Oftentimes there's children involved, and it's just be nice to have a nice outcome for, I suppose, everyone involved, to kind of have that positive outcome from. I suppose on yourself then, as a family lawyer, what would be, I suppose, the main challenges that you'd have, and also what would be your kind of, I suppose, favourite things about doing family law and the kind of the best aspects of it?
Well, I suppose from a kind of a selfish personal point of view, working for the Legal Aid Board and working in Cork, I like the kind of collegial aspects of it and the social aspects of it. You make really good friends, and you have good kind of social interaction. And I suppose working in the Legal Aid Board, if you do manage, as I say, to help somebody, it's extremely personally rewarding. Definitely, I mean, this is why, I'm delighted to participate in this recording, because I, let students know what a fantastic career it is, and really, in the Legal Aid Board, we want to attract the brightest and the best lawyers to work in that area.
That's great. And then on the kind of challenges side of it, what would be the biggest challenges you've experienced as a family lawyer, and I suppose working with the Legal Aid Board maybe? Was there any kind of challenges you've had over the years?
Well, I suppose it is a difficult job. I mean, you can be dealing with difficult clients and difficult judges, and it can be stressful like that. But as I say, in general, the rewards of the work outweigh the negatives, really.
Very good. And I suppose any students that might be listening that might want to go into family law, might want to work with you, would they be able to reach out to you? I know you said kind of the internship program usually runs, but just if they wanted to know more, would there be, what kind of opportunities for them to learn more? Would you say just reach out to yourselves, or maybe have a look on your website or anything like that?
Oh, yes. Well, of course, the Legal Aid Board, as I say, they have offices all over the country, and the staff in the offices are always delighted to, take a call about, we often have colleagues ringing us up for advice on family law cases, or if any student wants advice about their career, or, if they maybe would like to do some work experience or whatever, they should contact their local law centre. And as I say, we're always happy to reach out to students. And we are a public service organisation, so we do have that remit as well to promote our services. And as I say, we're always recruiting, and we want to kind of foster people who are interested in the area, and then maybe ultimately they'll end up coming to work for us.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
No, I think that's kind of a lot of what we're talking on. I know you talked about divorce and the massive change in that, and sometimes I always find it crazy that it was only so recent that divorce was actually introduced. It's crazy. But has there been any other changes you've seen since your time working in family law that were, I suppose, very significant, or would divorce kind of be the big one that's kind of shaped your work?
Yeah, I mean, they would be the biggies, really, the divorce, and then, as I said earlier, the cohabitation. You know, like we've so many families in Ireland. A lot of people just don't seem to get married anymore. So, you know, but yet and all, they have, obviously, you know, they might buy properties or they have children together, so they need to be able to navigate solutions if those relationships break down, and that's a huge part of our work as well.
I suppose we're seeing a kind of a change in structure of the families as well. As you said, a lot of cohabiting. There might be same-sex couples. We're seeing massive.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're doing, you know, I've done divorces for same-sex couples, and you know, it's all part of modern society, and the family law system has to obviously adapt to facilitate all these people, you know.
Yeah, I suppose kind of one area on that I kind of read a good bit about is kind of the Equality for Children's campaign. We're kind of seeing a bit on that, and the kind of, I suppose, the right to being a parent for same-sex couples. I know is still a bit of a difficult right, I think, in Ireland to get, but do you think that we could see maybe changes in that coming down, and kind of guardianship, but maybe moving it more to having the kind of parental status for, I think, is it for same-sex couple, for men can't get equal parental rights?
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, in fairness, I suppose that's another, you just reminded me there of another big, in 2015 we had we brought in a new kind of structure for custody and access cases, which embraces a lot of those situations. And, you know, you might even have a situation where a couple are cohabiting and that person might not be the biological father of the child, and those kind of issues. So we've brought in systems for recognising all types of families, and then you might have another family as well where it could be the grandparent who's providing the parenting role. So in fairness, I suppose that's another huge change that they've brought in since I started practicing, which recognises that, you know, a child is not just a child of a marital family, it could be a child of like granny and granddad, or granny and granny's new partner. You know, there's huge kind of variations, and those people can actually acquire parental rights now since the 2015 Act. You know,
definitely seeing a lot of changes in family structures anyway over the next few years, and I think there's definitely going to be work for a family lawyer going forward anyway. There's more and more. I say you've got busier and busier over the years since you first started.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the Legal Aid Board has grown exponentially. I think we started off with 7 law centres, and we now have, as I say, nationwide service, and we also contract out some of our work as well, such as the demand that we have to contract out some of our cases to private practice, and yes, there's absolutely no shortage of business in the Legal Aid Board, but look, you know, it keeps us on our toes and it keeps us out of trouble, so, you know, we don't we don't mind. We like being busy, and we like, you know, we like getting cases, and we like getting them concluded. You know, that's kind of what we try and do.
No, sounds like a great opportunity for any students interested in family law to go into, and a great career, as you said. You've been doing it for many years, so you definitely recommend people to get involved.
Yes, well, I mean, I suppose in fairness, I suppose I do work in the public side of it, but of course, I mean, you have an awful lot of exceptional private firms as well who practice in family law. As we mentioned earlier, there will be a huge portion of society who won't be eligible for legal aid and who don't want legal aid. They want to be able to pick their own lawyer. So there's as I say, there's a big family law family in Cork of really exceptional practitioners, and you know, as I say, there's plenty of opportunities in fairness in family law in both the private sector and the public sector, whichever, you know, people feel more comfortable working in, you know.
No, that's great. Well, thanks very much for joining me today, Patrice. It's been great to talk to you, and as I said, any students interested in family law, definitely look into it more and continue on that road. A massive thanks to yourself and to the Southern Law Association again for sponsoring this series, and stay tuned everyone for the final episode. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be back in UCC and participating in this, as I say.
No, it was great.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the UCC Law Society podcast series, one of 3 coming out over the next few weeks. If you have any suggestions at all on how we can improve the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, if that's what you're into, and our website, ucclawsociety.com. If you ever want to come on the show, that's absolutely no problem at all. Do get in touch with us though, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much.